Have you ever pretended to be someone else? Someone that could walk across multiple worlds, accomplish fantastic things, and see what otherwise would be unthinkable? Well then, role-playing games are meant for you. We're going to look through the RPG Spyglass and find the 25 most significant RPGs ever made. As per usual, when more than one game in a series could be considered for the list, only the best of the bunch will make it. Also, not all of these will be the most easily playable games nowadays. But what did you expect? Monuments aren't always practical to visit. Here they are in chronological order of release. Phantasy Star. From back in the 8-bit console days. Sega developed this game to compete with Dragon Warrior, or Dragon Quest as it is known in the West, but ended up surpassing it. It uses the very much of its time top-down view for the overland map travel, and first-person view for dungeons and battles. The lack of an in-game map meant that you were well advised to draw your own on paper, lest you get hopelessly lost in a maze somewhere. The Sega Ages remake fixes that and a few other gripes from back in the day, leaving little to no excuse to not dive back into it. The 3-planet-spanning epic was quite the voyage in 1987, and has not lost its charm. Wasteland, the seminal post-apocalyptic RPG. Based on tabletop mechanics, it offers a variety of solutions for most problems, like how you could open a door with your hands, lockpicking, sheer strength, using a crowbar, various weapons, or even just climbing over it as an obstacle, for example. The gameplay difficulty curve was tough as nails, though, but highly rewarding. As for the first time that I'm aware of, the game had a persistent universe, meaning that you had a lasting impact on the locations you visited. Unlike most games back then, that just reset locations back to default states once you left the screen. Very impressive. And that leaves a lasting memory for whomever played it back then. It has also been remastered recently, only in visuals, so the mechanics remain the same, but certainly making it more palatable to modern eyes and play in general. Darklands. A very underestimated game, completely unknown to many, despite its excellence. The most peculiar characteristic being that it's got a historical and geographically accurate setting. The 15th century Holy Roman Empire. This doesn't mean that you won't be provided with supernatural abilities. Train a character competent in religious studies and healing, and you'll be able to function as a traditional Dragons and Dungeons cleric role, for instance. The game is open-ended in terms of what the player does and in what order they do it in a large open world. It features a localized reputation system, allowing you to be a shining citizen in one town and a miscreant in the next. Many a dungeon, and quite intricate combat system. If you're still not convinced by my inclusion of the game on this list, because you simply have never heard of it before, go watch Josh Sawyer's videos on it, linked below. He shares equal admiration for it, and spent more time and effort explaining why that is. Earthbound. Technically a commercial flop when released, it has since gained well-deserved recognition for its general thematic satire of Americana, clever enemy designs, goofy puns, sardonic dialogues, and seamless overland and in-town movement that contribute to the feeling of actually navigating one single world space, something not usual in games of that era. The game mechanics by themselves are pretty much what you'd expect from 2D JRPG-style games, but the whole package is well above and beyond the run-of-the-mill 90s JRPG. Find Gigas and defeat him. And do try to not empty Ness's father's bank account. Chrono Trigger, if the name isn't blunt enough. In this one, you will be able to time travel between different epochs, from the age of dinosaurs to really far in the future, trying to muster allies, obtain weapons and information, and exactly how you're supposed to complete your missions. Speaking of, there's plenty of plot-related side quests, lots of character developments to enjoy, and a variety of different endings you might play towards. Unlike most JRPGs of the time, you are able to see enemies on the map and actively chase after them or try to avoid them. No random encounters. Ah, that's better. No random encounter neurosis. Lots to do, and you'll have a blast all the way through. Final Fantasy VII. The first in the series to release a PAL version, and thus gain worldwide recognition. It was also the first to include full motion video, 3D character and enemy models set against pre-rendered backgrounds. In other aspects, it kept true to time-tested formulas, meaning gameplay is still split between an overland map, locations, and battle screens, and of course your ultimate goal is to defeat the big baddies. Corporate evildoers with supernatural abilities, Shinra this time around. If you do decide to play this on the original PlayStation like I did, something I wouldn't advise doing now, you remember the quote-unquote good old days of CD swapping and tiny memory cards. The horror! Shining Force 3. This tactical, turn-based RPG was released in 3 chapters, though only the first was available outside of Japan until fan-translated versions became available recently. It's a forgiving game, given that when losing battles you still gain XP, and even if your main character dies, the only setback is losing half your money. Very forgiving. Effectively, there is no game over condition. The 3 scenarios overlap each other and are well worth a play in their entirety, if you can get your hands on them. Personally, I bought my fan translations directly on CD, so I can play it on the original hardware, my Sega Saturn. Though, ResurrectionGames.com might not have all of them in stock constantly. In the game, uncovering secrets and battling religious sects in Aspinia and Estonia, however, will keep you riveted. Planescape Torment. What can I say about this game that hasn't already been said? A true classic and a masterpiece. There is one caveat, however. You must like reading to enjoy this one, with its very long and numerous dialogue trees. But really, if you're not dyslexic and still don't enjoy reading, I can only feel pity for you. You don't know how many wonderful experiences and knowledge you're missing out on. This game is based on D&D 2nd edition, running on the Infinity engine. The game excels at providing choices, alternative solutions to quests, and a truly dynamic alignment progression instead of the traditional fixed neutral good or evil picks. It also favors stealth or dialogue-driven resolutions rather than combat-based ones. The dark setting is laid out for you right from the start. I mean, you do wake up in a mortuary staffed by the undead, and will eventually encounter previous incarnations of yourself. System Shock 2. The cyberpunk survival horror that freaks you out at every opportunity. The game slowly, but surely, seeps into your psyche. You start second-guessing yourself, doubting what is and is not possible in this universe. Who can you trust? Is there even such a thing anymore? Battling with shuffling horrors, grafting and researching and collecting organ tissues, hacking and navigating the meandering corridors of space stations. In space, only Shodan hears you scream. Grandia 2, the first video game I purchased in this millennium. It was released in Europe in February of 2001 for Dreamcast. It is now also available on PC and Switch. The combat system in this is quite particular in that an initiative system combined with a limited set of movement options in combat allow for unique actions like preventing enemy movement, counter moves, and combos, for example. Which is, well, not traditional when compared to other JRPGs of the time. Traveling across the world to find out if stories about the gods of light and darkness aren't more than they seem at face value, and of course finding out that they most certainly are, as is traditional. That is traditional in JRPGs. Ryudo, the main character, will need not just the magic Grana Saber, but all the help he can get from his friends to restore sanity to the land. Skies of Arcadia, an epic tale of flying ships, piracy, discovery, friendship, great mythical beasts, faraway lands of mystery at the four corners of the sky world of Arcadia, and lots of hand-to-hand combat, magic, and rather funny dialogue. The Odyssey meets Robin Hood meets Jules Verne of sorts. Visey and his ragtag crew will seek the Moon Crystal to prevent the Valiant Empire from reawakening the great Gygus and taking over all of Arcadia. The ship-to-ship turn-based combat alone would be worth a play, but on top of that you've got lots of unique discoveries to make while sailing the skies, and interesting critters to battle, varied kingdoms to visit and explore, and especially the visceral, burning will to defeat that odious Ramirez. Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of Amn, and the expansion Throne of Bhaal.
There is simply no
the grand isometric RPG. The detailed pre-rendered locations, cantankerous party members, the overarching world-changing plot lines, challenging combat, dozens of spells to learn and master, masterful dialogues, side quests, the bestiary, the magnificent pieces of equipment to be found, and, most importantly, Boo, the miniature giant space hamster. We must keep him safe from harm at all costs. I agree with Minsk. The wealth of lore, things to do, locations to explore, and depth of world building will populate your dreams until you finally caught up to Irenicus at Soldanesselar for a final confrontation, only to then start Throne of Ball and having your mind bent 6 ways sideways with the ultimate multiplanar mother of all chosen one type plots. The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, where the freedom of Daggerfall meets actual fully 3D graphics. A free-roaming experience is where this game's strengths lie, making your own bespoke story however you want it. The game bends to your whims without breaking the veil of the mighty fourth wall. With plenty of nobles, religions, guilds, and different organizations to meet, a gigantic world to explore, dungeons to crawl, monsters to defeat, magical items to find, Tamriel will engulf your imagination with so many possibilities from the start of the game. Unlike its predecessors, the world is no longer procedurally generated, meaning you will no longer have the same feeling of tiring, mindless repetition as often, nor the formulaic and rather bland design of its successors. This porridge is just the right temperature. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR for friends and family. The struggle between the light and dark sides of the Force never ending is? Choose from 3 classes and complete many quests you must for the final goal to achieve you will. Oh, of course. 800 years old and the basics of syntax still escape him. Master Yoda should really stop writing synopsis by now. Though the setting for the game is the Mandalorian Wars, there is no Baby Yoda here. You will travel on the Endar Spire, partake in fluid round-based combat sequences, play Pazak, engage in space combat and swoop races, etc. Depending on the class and side of the conflict you choose, many different story paths will be available. Don't fear missing out on anything, just play again and choose a different path. The writing is exceptional in all of the storylines. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, a vampire fledgling simulator set in Los Angeles. It's a sequel to Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, released just 1 year before, but the chasm between them might as well be a century given how much better the latter is. Inhabiting the skin of a vampire, choosing clans, navigating faction intrigues, manipulating humans, maintaining the masquerade, that is, keeping humans ignorant about the existence of vampires in general, keeping well fed without having to suck on and kill many humans, or, on the contrary, rampaging through the city like Nosferatu on steroids. You'll be meeting many a colorful character, complete fascinating quests, some not so much though, and most importantly doing all that after installing the fan fix patch. Seriously, playing it patched will avoid lots of pain. But then again, well, maybe that's what you like in vampire games. Pain. Dragon Age Origins. It's been a while, old friend. I remember when I played this one as if it was yesterday. To begin with, given how closely inspired by Lord of the Rings, Baldur's Gate, and other fantasy giants the game is, the lore and factions in Ferelden seem a bit off. There's a pervasive feeling of this is a knockoff of an original creation. Darkspawn aren't orcs, but are really close to being. The Archdemon isn't Sauron, but again, the Wardens aren't Baalspawn, but not that much different, and so on. However, once you start getting invested in the characters and world, everything in between and besides those aspects is so intricate and expertly woven that you will fall in love with the game. The companion combat control options, the quests, the locations, the integral role companions actually play in different plotlines. By the end of this fantastic adventure, you'll fondly remember Morrigan, Liliana, Alistair, and many others for a long time. Fallout New Vegas. If not the, certainly one of my favorite games of all time. Picking up where Fallout 2 left off was a tough ask of any game, but this one hits it out of the park. The post-apocalyptic Mojave, the variety and depth of the factions present in the world, the conflicts, settlements, problems facing the local populations, and how you can help, hinder, or just make your way into positions of power or not. The frankly better than most books level of dialogue writing, the mysteries to uncover little by little, small details, pieces of lore, world-building objects hidden in physical in-game nooks and crannies or storyline nooks and crannies, the vast and varied cast of companions and NPCs, each with their own motivations, goals, roles to play in society, or should I say, in the various societies depicted, seeing as the factions exemplify different and sometimes mutually exclusive models for how civilization should or could function and evolve. In a prime example of show, don't just tell, this world works whether or not the player character were in it at all. It just is, and you're in it for quite a ride if you play through it all. Not forgetting the excellent expansions, of course. Next time, I'm sure I can carry more gold out of the Sierra Madre. Maybe with some more buff out and jet.
Maybe I am, but not like you. Huh. Maybe it should.
Mass Effect 2. A cinematographic space opera RPG. A joyride for the xeno-horny. This is an alien coitus simulation. Well, sure, there are minor, secondary points of interest, but really, seducing blue-skinned weird things into bed is what the game focuses on, right? Just me? Ah, well. There's also an impending galactic doom, planetary exploration, and resource exploitation, tactical combat, an involved plot with politics, intrigue, media influences, betrayal, and whatnot, plus extensive character design options, multiple roles and ability specializations, and combinations you could work with, a plethora of available gear, and so on. But, can we get back to the awkwardly written B-movie flirting dialogue with xenomorphs? The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. Playing the toughest white-haired nonagenarian in gaming history, Geralt. You will become embroiled in the Aedom Revolt and change the course of history with your witching ways. You won't carry a cauldron around, but still manage to make potions on the fly somehow and carry hundreds of them in what look to be like very tight-fitting leather clothes. Magic witch pockets is how I explain it. Plus, you'll be drinking tons of these potions and never have to pee. I guess Geralt just sweats all of those liquids out? That's one handshake to avoid. Is that why witchers are avoided like the plague in this universe? Sweaty palms,
How much higher?
In any case, instead of having 16 times the detail, in this game, you get a possible 16 different endgame states, meaning there's a lot of replayability in this excellent RPG here. And you bet the fantasy medieval European world presented will bewitch you.
Did we hit the bastard? He's down.
Deus Ex: Human Revolution. It was a very close call between the games in the series, though the age factor really played against the original. Not so nice to play nowadays. Had it been made more recently, I probably would have picked it out of the bunch instead of this one. Human Revolution is, frankly, an almost perfect first-person shooter stealth game that provides large urban hubs as a backdrop to your transhumanist, mega-corporation-riddled, conspiracy-driven cyberpunk adventures. The central theme of the story is the integration of technology and humans, well, in fact, in their bodies, and their growing dependence on this technology. The entire plot revolves around different aspects of this, exploring social tensions, the looming tipping point beyond which humanity might be ultimately doomed by its own hubris, and what role you'll play one way or another.
I guess I never thought of it.
Dragon's Dogma, a hack-and-slash inspired RPG that has the best large-scale creature combat system I've ever seen and played. Slightly reminiscent of the Shadow of the Colossus, in that you can climb onto gigantic creatures to fight them, but it's much more involved in this one. Add to that a universe-shattering plot involving dragons, player-shared companions that you can make for others, and vice versa online. Large city hub with hundreds of NPCs just going about their daily lives, and your general lack of, spoiler alert, certain organs. It's in the trailer, so all make the experience more than worth a playthrough. I'm still flabbergasted to not have seen other games take inspiration from Dragon's Dogma for the combat systems. It's been years. It's so much more impressive to actually grapple and climb all over them to hit vulnerable spots than to just repeatedly hit the edge of a cyclopic creature's ankles and shins over and over until they die of shin bruising. Divinity Original Sin 2. The best old-school style RPG of the decade, bar none. The full 3D but pseudo-isometric perspectives used really fanned the flames of nostalgia for the Infinity games from back in the day. However, Divinity does it better at just about all gameplay aspects when compared to the classics that inspired it. You've got local and online multiplayer options, or solo play with the typical large panel of possible companions, dynamic combinations in skills, magic, classes, and environmental aspects to consider in combat, an engrossing and intricate and very long storyline, wonderful locations to explore, and various endgames that hinge on the choices you made throughout. Here's hoping that Baldur's Gate 3 builds even further on the monumental Original Sin 2.
Don't mind me.
Monster Hunter World. The first of the series to really grab the entire world's attention.
Let's go.
And boy is that deserved. If you can get past the quite annoying and clunky interface choices, there is a mountain of excellence hiding underneath. You shouldn't get fooled into thinking you need to hunt anything to death. The capture of monsters serves just as well as fatal hunts. Except when encountering the oh-so-pissed-off Elder Dragons, but that's a whole other ballgame. You'll spend, at least I did, most of your time observing creatures in their own ecosystems to better understand them, scouting flora, different animal behaviors, and investigating the particular characteristics of each creature when in their environment. After that, of course, comes the titular hunt. Get your gear ready because things can go very wrong very quickly with the incorrect approach.
Okay.
Kingdom Come Deliverance. A modern Darklands of sorts, and then some. The rare beast of an RPG set in a historical place and time surfaces again. This time, with such an intricate and, at first glance, complex set of mechanics and controls that some might be put off. But really, don't be. The pacing is just right to keep you going without too much trouble than is desirable. Challenging enough to be pleasant to play, but not so much it's discouraging. The action will unfold in a rich setting in late medieval, early Renaissance Bohemia. An open world game with period-accurate weapons, combat techniques, clothing, architecture, and locations. Just wow. I am now praying that Warhorse Studios love classical antiquity as much as I do, so we get a classical Greek or Roman period RPG as good as this is. If you were to compare this game to the much more popular, also medieval, Assassin's Creed, it'd be like comparing an Italian food franchise place to a genuine Italian chef's restaurant, only both costing the same. If you've got time or money for only one of these, it's a no-brainer. Disco Elysium. When you thought the dialogue-driven adventure RPG genre had pretty much hit all the innovations or twists on the formula it could, this comes along. A veritable breath of fresh air, not just for the genre in particular, but gaming in general. No big studios here, just a collective of artists. No action-packed cinematic cutscenes removing player agency, just phenomenal writing, moody and expressive backdrops, and watercolor or oil painting-like stylized graphics, original characters, grounded world building in so many different aspects, and the pièce de résistance, player-transparent game mechanics that you have clear feedback on revolving around mental health and personality traits, juggling inner dialogues with external ones, one facet of your subconscious with another. There is no other game like it. And I like it. Very much. And that just about wraps it up, folks. Here follows a list of honorable mentions that just didn't make the cut with so much stiff competition. So let's get on that. First, Rogue, Dragon Warrior, Quest for Glory 3, Albion, Legend of Mana, Ni no Kuni, Shadowrun Hong Kong, Nier Automata, or Automata, you pick, and probably Cyberpunk 2077, if it ever is really finally release complete. And that's it. See you next time.